So welcome to another edition of Simple Talks. Thank you for joining us. I'm Steve Jones of Redgate Software, and with me, to my left, I have
Grant Fritchey of Redgate Software.
and
Ryan Booz, Redgate Software.
last but not least,
Kellyn Gorman. Yeah, I'm Redgate Software.
So in this edition, we were still at the Past Data Community Summit, and we were talking a little bit about our jobs, right? What we kind of do. So we thought it might be interesting to talk a little bit about how we got into this role and what we've done. And maybe what we do for our jobs a little. So I will start because I think I'm the easiest. I got bought.
You're paid for.
It was an auction.
So I ran SQL Server Central with a few partners, and Redgate made an offer to say, hey, we'd like to purchase your site, because they had Simple Talk, and we had Brad McGehee at the time as an advocate.
Oh.
But they were looking to expand and do more. They couldn't hire me away, so they just bought the company, and I've fallen into this role. So that's what I do. How about, so Kellyn, let's start with you, because you're the newest advocate. How did you get into advocacy or this type of role?
I think most of the time advocacy kind of happens just naturally. It's something that you have a gift for, and people say, well, this makes sense. You're producing content that companies appreciate, that you might come into a way where you're blogging. And I had started blogging back in 2008. Pythian had come to me and said, we want you to come work for us. And I should have said that in a Russian accent, sorry. Alex Gorbachev said, come work for me. So I did that, and was there, and they were very supportive of advocacy. So I started working for them. I did it for Encatech as well. Went to a lot of Oracle conferences all the way through Oracle Cloud World, Oracle Open World back then. We weren't in the cloud yet, because Oracle wasn't into that whole cloud thing. That was just a fad.
Or Postgres.
Yeah. No, they don't do Postgres either. They're going to take all those databases back. They think so. But as I progressed through, I was known for the content that I provided, that I had a tendency to be able to talk about products in a way that didn't feel like a sales promotion. So people would keep bringing me back and having me write articles and having me produce content, no matter if it was for my company or anything else. And then this last time around, when I left Microsoft, because I was deep in focus doing deep tech at that point, I was not presenting at all. Silk did need that. When we negotiated my role, even though I was doing 30 hours for Silk as their director of data and AI, one of the things is they were trying to figure out, because I was being paid pretty good, how they could compensate for that. As I said, let me do whatever I want with my other 10 hours, because I don't think there's rules for me. I just go and break rules. And I said, I can go out here and work for other companies and write articles and produce content. And it says, Kellyn is the director of data and AI. If you go out there and look at the Oracle content for 23AI, every time somebody clicks on that video, it says, Kellyn is the director of data and AI for Silk. It gets her name out there. And they were like, sold. So I built that advocacy for them. I had been doing that for a year and a half, and Redgate had come to me. They knew I had those extra 10 hours, and they said, hey, we'll take those extra 10 hours and you can work for us as an engineer, a developer, and help us develop products. So I was working with them for the extra 10 hours. And all of a sudden we realized that they were looking for an advocate, and my name kept coming up. The person who was looking for the advocate didn't realize I was already contracted. So they went to Louise, who we all know. Anybody who comes to these events all knows Louise. And Louise is like, she's contracted to us, right? And there wasn't this, connection. And so the woman who is now my boss, Kirsty, was like, so I'm just going to come to you and see if you're interested in this advocacy role. It looks like it's up to you, between you and just you. So
Your competition was you.
It was just me and me. So I sat down and looked at it, and we again negotiated. I knew I still needed to kind of build the Legos at Silk, but I didn't need to be doing that for 30 hours a week. So my old boss was phenomenal, and I get to work with them for 4 hours still a week. And my full-time job is being an advocate for Redgate, which is no big deal for me. This is something that I love. It's easy for me to engage. But I get to be both an advocate as well as an engineer, and they're completely accepting of letting me do that deep technical work too, because I get bored easy. So it's been lovely, and I enjoy all the teams, and that's how I became an advocate at Redgate.
So it's interesting. Like we heard the keynote from Ginger Grant talking about your career, right? You have to invest and do things, but it's an
Yes.
interesting mix of connections and people with you, and then the work you did that pulled that thing together, right? So you worked to build skills outside of technical stuff,
Yes.
right? And then people gave you opportunities because you had gotten to know them and things, right? So that's an interesting thing. So for you, probably similar, is that, or how
Actually,
did
not
you
really-
get to
yeah.
Redgate?
That's a great question, which is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I've mostly been product. So actually, my undergraduate degree is in education,
Okay.
and so I taught for a couple years.
Wow.
But I came this close to doing computer engineering, and then life happened, but I just never let it go. So I was doing lots of side work and doing stuff, and then eventually helped restart a startup where I was at for 15 years. And in that time, that's when I hit my SQL Server data platform phase.
Right.
And so it was listening to people like you and people like Grant and using Redgate tools. I just had this, I realized, I could still help in what I loved the engineering, but I love teaching. I love helping.
Right.
I love learning, and I love helping people take the next step. And so honestly, the thing that held me back for the most part was I was in the middle of rural Pennsylvania.
Right.
And so whether it be Microsoft or some of the others that I felt like I could plug into, there's nothing for me. I'm not going to move my family to the West Coast just to do something. And so finally the pandemic hit. And I've been looking all this time, just still doing engineering stuff, helping run teams, doing, speaking at conferences as I could and go. And then it was Timescale. Timescale was, I just happened to look one day. We were planning to use their database, and I was on their website and saw the top job, Postgres Advocate. Like, what if I could do that? And so I started Timescale. I was there for 2 years, and just realized that it was probably some better opportunities. And it was Grant. One day I saw him posting about Postgres, and I'm like, "What is Grant Fritchey posting about Postgres for?" And I just reached out and said, "Hey, I'm just curious. Like, why are you talking about Postgres?" He's like, "Oh, Redgate's starting to get." So my next message back was, "Any chance you need help with a Postgres person?" And honestly, by the end of the day, I was on a phone call.
That was
with
a
Kate,
great message. I
Yeah,
was
but
like,
well, you literally
Yes!
said, "We just had a meeting this morning. Let me see." And so by the end of the day, I was on a phone call with Tom and Kate.
So that's interesting, right? For you, you happened to see stuff because you were looking for opportunities.
Yeah. I've looked over and over again, but as always, I would have had to go somewhere bigger to do it.
No, but that's interesting, right? That just the fact that you're out there looking for opportunities, right? Like I fell into this. I think slightly you fell into it, not so much.
I
right?
follow my network, my connections, and if it feels right, I go
You
there.
go.
I have been very lucky in my career that I haven't had to pretty much interview for a job in the last decade, because I'm as good as my network. My network
right.
is
Oh, absolutely.
incredibly
You and my
that's
wife are like
true.
that.
Yeah.
And you just didn't want to do an honest day's work any longer, right? Is that what
that
happened?
is 100% true. That is without a doubt true. Honestly, I had I'd built up my career. I'd started writing. I was doing a bunch
Yep,
of writing
you wrote for me, yeah.
for Steve here, and I wrote a book. I became an MVP. But I was just doing day in day out DBA work, and I was kind of getting a little unhappy with my position. The company wasn't treating me bad or anything. The company I worked for was awesome. They were a wonderful company, but I didn't feel like I was getting any kind of opportunity to grow and expand and do something fun. And so I started looking around and interviewing for jobs, and I didn't like any of them because they were all the same job.
They're all work,
It
right?
was all work. It all involved actually working. And so I went, you know what? I'm going to go for Kevin Kline's job, because Kevin
Okay.
Kline had been an advocate for Quest back
Yes.
in the day.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, it looked like a cool job.
Yes.
He wrote articles, and he didn't work, right? It looked really great. He didn't work. So
Kevin, we know you work. We know you work.
no, Kevin, we are joking. But I went to Redgate, and I said one day at Pass Summit,
Yep.
I walked up and I talked to a couple people I knew there, because I'd been a friend of Redgate for quite a while.
Right.
And I said, I think you should hire me. And they went, "That's an interesting concept. No, thank you. We're
And
not
your name
interested."
is?
Yeah,
Oh.
they said no.
I don't think I knew exactly
Yeah.
how.
Yeah, they said they were not interested.
Okay, and then
And then about 3 weeks later, I get a phone call, and so-and-so at Redgate, we would like to talk to you. Can you come out next week? I'm like, I don't have a passport because I'm a dumb American. So let me figure out how long it's going to take me to get a passport.
Right.
And then I will come and talk to you guys.
Oh, that's interesting. You advocate for yourself looking for something there.
I did.
So it's interesting because we had another advocate that was burning out in some sense. And I think it was serendipitous for you that they were like, we don't need another person. Then a few weeks later, they realized we actually do need another person because this individual is going to quit.
Right.
So, that's interesting. So
Yeah,
all a little bit different.
A little bit different.
Yeah, just all a little bit
situations.
different.
I think the interesting thing for all of us though is we all made an effort to do more than just our job.
Yeah.
Right, in terms of writing, speaking, projecting knowledge, teaching others something else.
In the company?
In
As
the company
for
or outside
Redgate
the company,
or
From
right?
within the
Like, I'm
company I
sure-
was in, I was doing all kinds of stuff outside. Now I was writing articles and teaching classes in my company,
Yeah.
Right.
but I was doing a lot of it outside the company too.
But I'm sure, right, all of us inside the company are doing more than we actually had to do, right? We could have
I was
done
very
less.
fascinated by that as I was, investigating, is this the right place for me? As I understood what you were doing
Right.
inside Redgate and the way that I see it now. So you can correct me as I'm wrong here too. That they were like, well, Steve is very involved in the sales group and
Yeah.
how the products are marketed and everything. And Grant just goes anywhere they ask him to. That's pretty much the thing. You were doing a lot with the product development of the Postgres situation. And that was important to me as I start to work with some of the newer products that we're developing on my side. And I know all of you are like, it's Oracle. I get bored easy, so I don't like to be pigeonholed. And that's probably been my challenge as I've gone from community to community, is Oracle sees me as just this horrible betrayer of the product. Microsoft's like, you're the weird Oracle girl. I don't like to be pigeonholed.
Yeah.
And that's often been a challenge for many companies as I've been doing advocacy, is they're like, you're not loyal enough. We want you to do OCI, just OCI. We want you to just do Azure. Why do you have to do that Oracle stuff in Azure? I like the stuff that people say will never work. I like the stuff that's more multi-platform, more complex, that people say, we can't do this. How do we look at what are realistic products to me? What is the realistic world? The world isn't clean, it's messy.
It's
It's
messy.
very messy.
And I like messy. So I'm like here to do the messy.
Yeah.
There we go.
I mean, you do a lot of the hard stuff, and certainly I think on our engineering side, we lack some specific expertise in practical Oracle stuff. So that's yours. Like I used to do a lot of
It goes
that.
past Oracle too, though. I mean,
There's
you're,
more, right?
You're helping out all over the place.
But
I
I
love
used
it,
to do a
though.
lot of that
Yeah,
in
I
the
love
SQL
that.
Server space, right? We've gone over there to give a lot of feedback to try to help them understand how and why things work in SQL Server,
Well,
right?
yeah,
Postgres.
and especially
For
Azure.
you.
I mean, that's.
But-
I'm a cloud man.
Yeah.
I'm a cloud boy.
I think the nice thing for us now is that we do have the freedom to do lots of different stuff because Redgate works in lots of different areas.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And even if we're not doing products in those areas, we're always interested in the potential,
Yep.
right? Possibility. And I don't know about you, but even as I do sales, I put the interest of the customer first and what's best for them.
course.
Like
Oh,
I would love
yeah.
for them to buy licenses, but
yeah.
I'm always trying to say what will work best for them, because if we're not a good fit, I don't want to
Absolutely.
fit.
Right, yeah,
I don't want to
yeah.
force it.
I would really rather not sell to people if it's not what they need. I
Right.
mean,
The
And
best
that's why
salesmen don't
that's
sell.
why I'm not in sales.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. It's when you take care of that customer. And I always felt this when I was at some of the larger companies. You would have tools that would track what paid you the most. And I'd like leave and find out I had never logged into them
Yeah.
because I was like, what is that? And even today, somebody go, did you ever log into Mint? What's Mint? I don't know what this is. And people from Microsoft are going, oh, I know Mint. Yeah. I don't know what it is. I don't log into it.
It's a phone company.
It is
It's
actually
one
will tell
of
you what you get
many things.
There's
paid
lots
on
of
different
mints. There's
products.
lots
I
of
think
mints.
Mint
Okay.
or
Oh,
Rain, yeah.
Yeah.
They're really hilarious. And when I was leaving, I heard about these and they're like, so what'd you get paid on commission? I'm like, I just want the customer to have what they need to be successful.
Yeah.
And that really made me successful when I was at Microsoft doing that.
It does, but it's been an interesting. So for me, I've been starting my
Been at this a
18th
long
year
time.
now at Redgate with contracted employment, but watching us move from a sell company to a subscription company, like it took a few years, but it
Yeah.
has changed the way engineers and others look at the products.
Yes.
Right. And even salespeople to some extent, like they still want commission, right? They're still looking.
That's
But-
their jobs, though. They need to. Yeah.
They're starting to understand that we have to have long-term success with customers, not short-term success for this to work out well.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Right. And I know people complain about subscriptions. Maybe now we're all used to it because we buy music and video and everything by subscription.
Sure.
But it has drawn us to focus. And maybe the best example, and I don't know if you know this, but in our different areas, we have tactical teams whose only job is to respond to customer stuff.
Right.
It's not roadmap stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So they respond, they hear the bugs or the complaints from customers, and they work on that for the next 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever, which is something I hadn't seen before. Like we've never had that kind of tactical team
Yeah.
to do that. So it's been an interesting world.
And the thing is, honestly, I've had 2 conversations this week who recognize the responsiveness of Redgate
Yeah.
as a customer,
Yeah.
and just really appreciative. And
Yeah.
we don't get that from everywhere, right?
We don't,
So it's
right?
like,
I mean, now we do release every week. Sometimes we do. Sometimes
We
we
never
break
break anything.
part of something,
Never.
right? There was a release that Ryan called me and said, "Hey, this thing's broken." I was like, "It works for me. Like, works in SQL Server, so I don't really care about Postgres. It works."
Yeah, I heard about it.
But it was broken for him. But we fixed it fairly
Very
quickly.
quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, and we got an apology from the developers. Maybe not to you, but to us for sure.
So I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
one is, because I feel like you got to ask this, like, what is the thing you love most about this kind of job? And then, as always, the antithesis. What is the most challenging part?
All right.
And whatever order. There's no.
All right, I'll go.
Yeah.
The thing I love the most is the opportunity to help people. We do a lot of things to help people, and that's either helping people with Redgate software and Redgate tools and all that stuff, or it is just helping people with SQL Server or Postgres. I love the fact that one of our purposes for existing is to help people, and that's just great. It's my favorite thing. My challenge, I'm just going to say it, and I'll get in trouble later. My challenge is we work for the marketing team, and the marketing team would just love for us to say Redgate in a continuous stream, and we do have to spend a lot of time fighting with them, and that is a challenge to the job, honestly. We've said Redgate 20 times here because we're working for the company.
Oh wait.
But seriously, that's been the challenge for me.
Okay, that's interesting.
Cool.
Do you have anything? Yeah.
I was going to say the marketing challenge is always one, as I was just saying, you can come in and talk about a product without ever saying it's a product.
Yeah.
And really what you're talking about is a solution for people so that it's a solution to their problems. And when we're working for marketing, there are many folks that may not understand your audience. They may be looking at that decision maker, that C-level, the person that's going to sign the checks. And many times that's not who we're speaking to. We're speaking to the person that has a problem that day in the technical world, and we resonate with them. They go, you feel my pain, you understand my pain, and you are offering me a way out. I will
Grunts
take
in the
that any day.
trenches. Those are my people.
Yes,
The grunts
yes.
in the trenches.
So with marketing, we may have to take them back and go, I know you want leads, but these people aren't here for your leads. These are the people that are going to go back and go, that product, yeah, C-level person, you're going to sign it. But really, for me, it's going to solve my problem for the day. And this person explained this to me. It showed me, did the demonstration. I'm feeling good about this. And that's who we speak to. That's who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say very similarly. I've loved how I've been able to be, I'd say helped, but just encouraged and enriched by other people who've done this and who invest in the community. And I just love that I get to be able to help do that as well, right?
Yeah.
Because we've talked about so much this week. We talk about it every time we have pass. Community is so essential, not just to job growth, but to personal health, to just success in the work that we're doing. And so it's just, I really love that I get to be part of that, and that keeps you going. And I love forming those community connections. So I'd say the hardest thing that's been a challenge these last 2 years for me is the world's opened back up. Like, I actually don't know what it was like from a traveling perspective before the pandemic. Like, I went to conferences, I spoke, but it was when I could and but But there is so much happening now. It's really challenging, particularly in a company that wants to invest, wants to be in new places, and there's only so many of us. And honestly, there are more conferences and places we could go to be help and be part of the community than we can. So understanding, how to approach it each year is a new challenge.
I'm hitting like 3 and 4 conferences on a trip sometimes.
Sometimes you
It's
are,
crazy.
man. Yeah.
But you're
and
picking
in
by
th-
locations some
and in
days.
2 or 3
I like that.
countries.
Yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
he's picking because there's a history, museum.
Yeah,
he
Yeah,
he's
hasn't
like,
yet
that's a
seen.
neat place to go.
battlefield.
Battlefield. There's a battlefield he hasn't yet seen. But.
Yeah, it's I don't do work. I visit battlefields.
But I went to Malta on vacation. You went to Malta on like a conference, and I was like, "Go Grant!" Yeah.
I think for me, I do a lot of different things. Right, I've been here a long time, know a lot of people, and I've touched a lot of different areas. I think the most interesting thing I see, apart from what you've said, is that people that are excited about trying to do better, I get to have some really neat conversations with them.
That's awesome.
And it's often customers, but it's certainly sometimes in the community things that it's exciting to me to just talk with them about how to find a solution and what works and what doesn't work. Because in the last few years, one of the things I've realized a lot and I've tried to adopt is that your reality is your reality, right? Most of us like, oh, if only we had done this, if we could go back in time, it's like, that's not possible.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So no matter where you
working
are, it's always a get there from here problem. And trying to talk about how you might approach that, to me, has been fascinating. And a lot of times it's not even the technology piece, but when it's technology, it's still a good thing.
Sure.
I think the hardest thing, like you, Ryan, is that the travel can be a grind and it wears on you. And it's not only the physical health, but it's out of your routine, away from your home kind of thing, and trying to get reset. And I think we all control our own schedules to some extent, but also not to some extent.
Yep.
And it feels like it's feast or famine. Like I don't have a lot to do, or I'm just buried. Right?
Yeah.
Where everybody wants the same exact hour you're on a plane.
Yes, and so
Yeah.
that is a challenge. And so, at least for me, we're very cognizant of my schedule with our boss about how many time zones I'm crossing and how often. So it's less the volume of trips, it's more am I moving time zones, because there was a point I went Denver to Florida to Vegas to Denver to Florida to Denver to Cambridge in like a month.
Right.
And it was just too many time zones back and
Oh
forth.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I've done stuff like that too.
yeah, I
It
think that's the
hurts.
biggest challenge so far. I don't try to keep up with the Redgate technology so much anymore. Like I depend on our sales engineers a lot to answer questions for me, because we're changing so rapidly.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like I
So
don't bother to
fast.
worry about what's new in Monitor, what's new in TDM, what's new in Flyway. I'm like, hey Renee, what can we do this? What's changed?
Yeah.
Right? Because I just don't have time to do that.
That's wild.
Last comment, because I think it's interesting just to even hear you, because I remember that set of trips that you were doing.
Yeah.
The cool thing about that, if you stand back and think about it from a kind of 10,000 foot level, is that also means there's community alive and active and happening too in
Yeah,
places
yeah.
that you need. So that's
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
that is exciting, and I think it's just going to continue to be a challenge to.
One of those was volleyball. Just to
Okay,
be
well,
fair.
anyway, that's a community too.
It
That's
is.
still
It is a
community
community,
too.
yeah.
So yeah,
So-
that's good.
All right. Well, hopefully you've
Great.
enjoyed this episode of Simple Talks, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.